So this is French, which is, you know, it's rough, right? When we're out here talking about pourtant un continue de sortir de quatre déséquilibré. But anyway, this is an interesting thread from like ages ago, yeah. I was going to read it just now because it just randomly popped up in my thing again. But let's have a little gander here. So it's 2026, and we keep releasing very unbalanced cards. Cards that are strong going first, but useless going second. Advice is for anyone who got their game designer job at Konami in a surprise box. I'm sure there's some very important cultural undertones and, you know, colloquialisms that aren't being translated properly here. But for anyone who speaks French, getting your job in a surprise box apparently is really insulting. So anyway, these are some of the most egregious examples of go first, I win cards that are a lot worse going second. Diabell's not terrible going second, but the discard cost is obviously really hard, and you need cards to be able to beat your opponent. I know, insane. But let's have a read here anyway. Let's see what he's got to say. Gabriel Susi, for anyone who doesn't know, is a European champion and a multiple-time Worlds competitor, I believe. So he's actually pretty good for a French player. I'm kidding. Stop releasing cards with a huge cost, making them automatically useless in going second, but broken in going first because they offset the investment. Discarding a card sounds like ridiculous with Diabell Star, right? Like you summon a big body for -1. That's like terrible 101 card economy, right? But the amount of advantage that one single Diabell Star gets you is unbelievably like worth the discard cost. If you were to only play Diabell in a going first environment, for example, there's a world you would play Diabell if it discarded 2 cards, potentially, depending on the deck, right? Like, that's how good the whole, like, combo that you do is, right? So, yeah, offsetting that investment is, like, that card advantage is meaningless when you're going first, but massive going second. You wouldn't. I think Snake Eye would play Diabell if it discarded 2. Example, Diabell, Deception, Jokel, and the Elven Notes. Do the Elven Notes even have, like, a cost, per se? The tough thing about the Elven Notes is that they just, like, simply don't function if your opponent has any sort of interruption that... How would you describe it? Non-removal disruption? Yeah, that's a weird... Has anyone ever used that term before? But that's literally what it is. Non-removal disruption. So if you're able to prevent your opponent from using a card in the middle monster zone, like you've just jammed their middle monster zone and they can't play, right? They summon Lucina, you like book it or something, Crown, right, as a good example. Like they literally can't play the game. Crown especially, right? Because normally you'd be able to go like normal summon a guy, sync it off, get a search, then special another guy. If they, like, you know, imperm your Lucina or something. But, yeah. Better since Juhu. Is this, like, French for Jush? There aren't any in Dracoteo, Yummy, or Radiant Typhoon. Stop the spell continuous cards in Engine. It makes them null going second because they are very sensitive to destruction. The development step should always be to be good going second. Yeah, designing cards that are good going second, first of all, is probably the reverse of how Konami makes cards, right? So one thing that really stuck out with me ages ago when 07 for Heart of the Cast, Josh is going to message me back any moment to resume filming, by the way. I'm just waiting for him to like tell me when he's available. But the one thing that Ram Ranch said was Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically as a card game, compared to more modern card games, like, for example, Runeterra or Star Wars, fundamentally, Yu-Gi-Oh! Feels like it's designed from a player 1 perspective, then they reverse engineer and then go to player 2. Do you know what I mean? So when they make a card like Diabell, it's like, okay, well, let's make this card. Here's a combo that it does, and then, you know, blah, 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 right? That's a card that's been designed with player 1 in mind. Comparatively, you know, you could look at something like Sphere Mode as a very, very, like, you know, extreme example of a go second card. That card was designed with going second in mind. That card is made for player 2. These cards are not made for player 2, right? Like, Dragoon for player 2 has, like, nice burn effect and stuff like that, but, like, summoning this going second is like that's a chore. That's a chore. And continuous spells are the most vulnerable to that, right? Because they're continuous spells. At any point, you chain to them. You can't even get the activation effect. Never mind the continuous other effects it might have. You know, whereas a normal spell, like it's harder to interact with a tactics than it is with a betrayal because it's just by virtue of being a continuous card. The development step should always be good for going second. So whenever Konami makes cards, they should probably consider making the cards from the perspective of going second rather than going first initially, right? So for example, I've used this 1,000 times whenever we've discussed game design, and that card is Ketu Dracotail, you know? So how about we just make spells and traps like monsters so they resolve even if they're removed? That is how they work, though. What do you mean? That's literally how spells and traps work, unless they're specifically continuous. They do that when they try to improve a null deck. I'm not sure why this is translating as null deck. I don't really know what that means. Essayons d'améliorer un deck nul avec du support. Nul? That just literally means null. I'm not sure what that's. Just bad deck. Deck nul. Bad. Is that what? Is that how French people say bad decks in Yu-Gi-Oh? Just zero deck. Allowing 30 effects on a single card. They do that when they try to prove a null deck with support, allowing 30 effects on a single card. Yeah, like a spell card that I'm actually in the middle of writing a small video essay thing on this exact subject. But a lot of power creep isn't just a case of like, oh, Snake Eye Ash is just better than Stratos, right? Because Stratos searches a card. Snake Eye Ash searches a card, and then it has a special summon effect on top of it, right? But the more minor examples that we've seen over the last few years is like spell cards have a lot of this now, right? There's like a Rota that has a grave effect. Banish it, gain an attack boost. Recycle a thing in your graveyard, etc., right? So these are like little things that they've added onto engine pieces and cards over time that have just made them so much more powerful. Stop offering support to decks whose original mechanics are toxic or unbalanced for going first. It's stupid and no explanation needed. Recently, Dragon Link... Whoa! What? Whoa. Dragon Link good now. DDD, Megalith, Furhire, Magistus. Furhire, I don't know about that. They've given that deck a couple of cards that are... Like, one of the examples I always use is Ketu, and the other Furhire card, Storm Furhire, or something I think it's called. That one is really cool. That card has a E-Telly for going second. But I think what he's specifically referring to here is you look at these decks and you think to yourself, like, these are... C'est un deck nul. Oui, je sais. But these decks are, like, obnoxious going first, right? Like, if you lose the dice roll and you're playing a more of a engine-heavy deck, like, yeah, it's some rogue deck, but you're literally not going to beat DDD going second. Like... That's like the frustrating thing, right? It's like, because all of the good cards that they've made recently for Dragon Link and DD, like, they're not good going second. Borrow Shroud Dragon, it's like, bro, Konami, you made a support for Dragon Link, a deck who, you know, was good, like, historically, like, 2 or 3 years ago, but it's like, all of the cards, literally all the Dragon Link cards they made are just, like, they only are good going first, you know? The support cards include, like, a Link 2 that can search a card, which is like, the problem is getting to the Link 2. A Link 3 that reborns itself from the spell and trap zone, and then a new boss monster, Link 5. It's like, boss monsters were not what Dragon Link needed more of. Don't get me wrong, it is extremely based and epic to end on Boral End and Shroud, but like, that's not what the deck needed. DDD is the same case, right? It's got a lot of like, admittedly, a lot of, like, the DDD support are, like, extender-based. But, you know, even, like, DDD has this example with the continuous spell, right? Like, DDD, its best new card is a Pendulum monster, right? Which is essentially a continuous spell. You know, the Kashtira-looking woman. Like, that's just very, very vulnerable and susceptible to interruption going second. You know, like, you just like, can't beat these decks going second. And they're rogue decks, you know? But, like, the reason they aren't good is, like, they are so fragile going second. They cannot consistently put up, like, an X2 record to go far in a tournament setting. No built-in protection against hand traps or omni-negation of uncontrollable engines. Duo Drive, Ripper, Lien 3 DDD. Which card is this? Link 3? The, Zusi seems to really have it out for DDs, by the way. He fucking hates that deck, apparently. Ragnarok Sky Zeus, or whatever his name is. He just, like... That card is so custom and broken, it's unbelievable. DD's never, and like, hasn't been a meta deck recently, by the way. But it's like pop a DD, you can negate a hand trap, and you can do an extra pendulum summon. Tier 4 deck, by the way. Mitsu Trap. Omnis should stop on board effects with possible counters because they target or are continuous, so you can pop them, etc. Is he advocating for no built-in protection against hand traps or omni negation of uncontrollable engines? That's kind of what it sounds like he's saying, right? Like he's saying, I think he's saying that Dual Drive Ripper and the Link 3 DD are bad card design, right? Which I guess would make sense. So like, one of the reasons why Apollosa was so frustrating to play against is it forced your hand traps to be used basically whack-a-mole, right? Activate a card, negate. Activate a card, negate. Activate a card. Oh, I don't have any more hand traps. Okay, full combo. I get the exact same end board that I had anyway. And so when you have decks that like can Ripper you or Dual Drive or apparently go play DDD, it's just nullifying your hand. Okay, admittedly, I hate defending DDD because that deck is sort of obnoxious to play against. But to be fair, in DDD, if you get to the Link 3, you've usually already resolved Gilgamesh and Solomon and all of the other like really powerful like extender starters of the deck. Like the Link 3 becomes irrelevant by that point. Negating a hand trap isn't actually it doesn't matter by that point because you've already resolved Gilgamesh and Solomon. But anyway, maybe there's some lines I'm not aware of. But yeah, in-engine negates as part of your combo that isn't even part of the end board is crazy, right? Like if you were to end on Ripper, that would be like crazy, you know? Not crazy, sorry, that would be fair, right? If you could use Ripper to search and then it said once per opponent's turn, you could negate a card in the hand or the graveyard. That would be like way more reasonable, right? But Ripper is like an engine card that also now puts up disruption. And on top of that, you can just keep going. Like that is so ridiculous. The engine is splashable. You can do other things and other archetypes and keep playing and you'll be fine, right? So yeah. TLDR, designing decks with going second more in mind than going first, I think is fundamental to keeping this game not frustrating. Because I always find it crazy to think of like DDD as like a deck that is so obnoxious and ridiculous when it goes first and puts up all the ridiculous combos and plays through hand traps extremely well, especially if you aren't familiar with it, because why would you be? It's not a meta deck, and yet it doesn't even matter because the deck is a complete glass cannon that can't do anything going second, right? So, yeah.